So I don't need to hear the lectures because they're misplaced. Talk to yourselves. You're the ones who didn't say a word when George Bush did a tax cut to billionaires and put it all on the credit card. And now you still want to extend those tax cuts and bleed the revenues. You're the one. I will not yield till I'm finished. I've stated that before. But thank you for asking. Here's where we are. I have to reiterate so I don't lose my place. Under Bill Clinton, the Democrats balanced the budget, created surpluses, and 23 million jobs. George Bush came over. He held a press conference. I saw it last night. He said, "We don't need surpluses. This money belongs to the American people," and he didn't say what he meant. He meant it belongs to rich people, super rich people, who earn over $1 billion and $1 million. He gave away the store. Then he went to war, 2 wars, put it on the credit card. And my friends on the other side never once said, gee, I can't raise the debt ceiling to pay the debts. They all voted to pay, almost to a person, raise the debt ceiling when it was doubled from Bill Clinton. But now, after George Bush left a mess, a god-awful mess in the debt and the deficit, he handed President Obama a $1.2 trillion deficit. All of a sudden, they blame President Obama for all of this. The American people get it. They don't buy it. They understand it. They're not happy where we are, and they shouldn't be. But they know where the problem started. You know why? Because you can't rewrite history. Well, you could try. But those deficits and those debts, those numbers, they're in the books. And unless you erase them, they'll remain in the books. I don't care whether it's talking about Paul Revere's ride or the deficits. That's history. So I'll show you the deficits we had when we were in control. We got it down to 0, and we got surpluses, and 23 million jobs. And that all was erased. And then we entered a situation the last couple of years of the Bush administration where jobs were bleeding at 800,000 a month, 700,000 a month. Credit was frozen. The automobile industry was in the tank. And President Obama took action. And this recovery is tough. The worst recession since the Great Depression. So this is what I know we can do. If we work together, dare I say it, we can adopt a framework that understands billionaires and millionaires don't need their tax cuts now. We can get some more revenues in here and cut the fat and cut the duplication and go after the people who don't pay the taxes they owe and end the war in Afghanistan and save $1 trillion over 10 years. I can come up with $4 trillion pretty easily. Allow Medicare to negotiate with the drug companies for lower prices. How's that? $200 billion. But no, instead there's demagoguery. And there's attempts to bring down bills like this, clean, nice bills that will do everything we know we need to do now. Leverage our spare dollars, attract public investment, create jobs. No, we're facing a host of amendments. And I don't find it funny. I find it sad that we cannot come together. I have a city in California, a very fast-growing city in the Silicon Valley, San Jose. We got them through this program $3 million for the renovation and expansion of the Center for Employment Training. What do they do there? They teach skills. So when we see there are certain job losses going on, we teach people the new skills. We increased that center's capacity by 860 students. We expanded access to a GED so people who didn't finish high school could get their diploma. We taught them how to speak better, how to read better. We taught them small business entrepreneurship. This is what we're expanding to new people. And this project's going to create 4,900 jobs and leverage $3 million in private investment. This one was 1-to-1. It was $3 million in public investment, $3 million in private investment, 4,900 new jobs predicted. I can tell you, we are continuing with this program. And by the way, these are not earmarks. We have 6 regional offices, and there are applications made for these grants, and they are made by the EDA, and it's under the Commerce Department. In the West Coast, this is in '03, just to prove some points here, EDA invested $1.8 million in the construction of a water and energy technology incubator in the Central Valley of California. For those who don't know the Central Valley, it's where you get a lot of your fruit and vegetables. And they're suffering and they're struggling with a downturn. In '03, according to EDA, the incubator has housed more than 15 entrepreneurs since it opened, and those entrepreneurs have obtained over $17 million in private capital and created jobs for Central Valley. $1.8 million in the construction of more than 2,300 square feet as an incubator for technology business. And look what happened. From that small investment, attracted $17 million. That's a huge leverage, a huge leverage. You all know Boeing Company. In order to help mitigate the Boeing Company's decision to reduce manufacturing jobs in Renton, Washington, EDA invested $2 million in '06 to help build infrastructure to serve the commercial redevelopment of a 42-acre former aircraft manufacturing site. The redevelopment has created a mixed-use campus used by businesses focusing on commercial services, high-tech, and life sciences, 2,500 jobs. In the Midwest, I talked about this yesterday, the city of Duluth in Minnesota. They did something terrific there. They gave a grant of $3.5 million. It was matched by a city grant of $2.3 million, and they set up this aviation business incubator at Duluth Airport, and a company named Cirrus Aircraft grew from a handful of employees to 1,000 by '08. Now, this incubator is now leased to Cirrus Design Corporation, which has the largest share of the worldwide general aviation market. Mr. President, what we're talking about here is planting a seed of economic development. And that seed attracts more seeds from the private sector, from the local people, from the nonprofit. And at the end of the day, what have we done by that little seed? It really has grown. And it's happened since 1965, when this program was created. And by the way, you'll be shocked to know, it was authorized at the same amount of money in 1965. $500 million. Is that right, Kathy? $500 million. So the fact is, this isn't a program that has grown and grown, and it's stayed the same, which means if you put inflation in, it's dramatically cut to a tiny part of what it once was to the country. But it's a beautiful part of economic growth. And what do we need today? Jobs. And what's the second thing we need? Jobs. And what's the third thing we need? Jobs. So I'm not amused by, 27, 28, 29, 30 amendments, some of which have nothing to do with what we're talking about. One of my friends on the other side of the aisle has a reform. Everything we did and worked on. I guess he wants to go back to the days when the banks got bigger, 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 gambled with our money, and we almost lost capitalism in this country. Okay, that's his right. What is he doing it on this bill? Without a hearing. Another colleague has a 700-page amendment to end the regulations, I say to my friend, that protect the health and safety of the people. Not one hearing on it. So I think the American people have to wake up. So I'm saying wake up, America, today. Wake up and pay attention to what's happening here. We have a bill on the Senate floor that is meant to do one thing, create jobs in areas that have been hard hit by this bad economy. Why are the Republicans stalling it, hurting it, putting forward amendments that have nothing to do with it? You have to ask that question. They voted for it under George Bush unanimously, the same program. They voted for it nearly unanimously out of our committee, I say to my friend, who is a senior member and a great chairman of a subcommittee on our committee. They voted for it, and now they're delaying it and offering all these poison pill amendments to it. And it's the second time they've done it. America, you have to wake up. It's the second time they've done it. They did it to the small business bill. They hurt small business. They're doing it to this bill. They're hurting job creation. And they're hurting small business again. And they're hurting big business. I said before, one of the things helped Boeing. The Maytag, there's another company you know the name of. In 2007, the Maytag plant and headquarters in Newton, Iowa, which employed 1,800 factory and administrative workers, was closed down. By 2008, the city identified 2 manufacturing operations that could be located on the old site. TPI Composites, a wind turbine blade manufacturer, and Trinity Structural Towers, a manufacturer of massive steel towers for windmills. Can I ask my friend if he would like some time on this?
I think I'm more than happy.
I'd like that. I'm going to continue telling you the Maytag story. When I finish, I'm going to turn to my very important member of the committee, Senator Cardin, for some remarks. EDA invested $580,000 in 2008 for grading, site preparation, and surfacing for a wind tower storage facility that was leased to Trinity. That $580,000 attracted $21 million in public investment. That same year, we saw investments in Iowa. So I'm going to stop now, yield the floor so that my friend can ask unanimous consent that he be recognized.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we're on the pending amendment, so we're not.
On the bill. On the bill.
That is correct.
Mr. President, let me just compliment Senator Boxer for her leadership on this bill. As Senator Boxer pointed out, this EDA bill that we brought forward is about jobs. It's about offering jobs in underserved areas. These are areas which are difficult to create jobs in good times, but in hard times they get hit even harder. The EDA program leverages a small amount of public support for private sector investment that creates jobs in underserved areas. In my state of Maryland, EDA projects have been very successful in bringing jobs to the rural parts of Maryland, to western Maryland, to our eastern shore. They have leveraged private sector investment, and we've maintained and created jobs. Yesterday on the floor, I gave specific examples of EDA projects in western Maryland, on the eastern shore of Maryland. I talked about an old manufacturing plant that was saved under an EDA grant, leveraged 10-to-1 with private sector investment, saving over 100 jobs and creating another 20. These are jobs that are important for economic growth in our community. You know, we all understand that this recovery has been a very difficult one for us to get moving at the pace of job growth that we know we need for this nation. We all talk about what we could do about our budget deficit, but I would hope that we all would agree the most important thing we can do would be to create more jobs. It's interesting that the majority leader has brought forward 3 major bills now to create jobs. I'd like to have a little cooperation on the other side of the aisle so we can get those bills to the President for signature. The FAA bill that deals with modernizing our aviation system, which will create jobs, by the way, and also keep our airs safer, is tied up in conference. Let's move it forward. Let's get it done and get it to the President. We had the SBIR bill before us that would help small businesses that are in innovation as far as job growth, and we had so many non-germane amendments that were offered to it, we couldn't get it through the floor of the Senate. Well, now we got an EDA bill that came out of the Environment and Public Works Committee by near unanimous vote that over the history of the EDA has not been controversial in its reauthorization. And now it looks like we're going to see that there's going to be numerous non-germane amendments offered in an effort basically to just ignore the importance of the underlying bill that can create jobs for our communities. So I just want to urge my colleagues to, yes, come forward with your amendments. Let's debate them. If they're not relevant to creating jobs under the EDA bill, then, you know, let's be reasonable about this. Let's not have a whole series of amendments that are totally beyond the scope of this bill, like the debt limit issues or the repeal of our financial reform of last year. I don't mind debating those issues, but they shouldn't be debated at this particular moment. I do hope, Mr. President, that we will be able to get to the reauthorization bill. I pointed out yesterday that one of the highest priorities from our local people in Maryland on need was additional help from the federal government for planning dollars. Planning dollars allow local communities to develop a strategy that can help them with economic growth in a community. I can tell you, having recently been out to Cumberland, Maryland, a great part of our state of Maryland, beautiful part of our state of Maryland, used to have a lot of manufacturing jobs there. Many of those jobs have moved on. They do have a strategy, but they need the planning help and either to put that together so they can come forward with a game plan attracting more private sector interest in order to be able to create more job opportunities for families to stay in the western part of our state. It's that type of assistance that is critically important to America. I come back to the point that Senator Boxer raised. The purpose of this bill is to create jobs. Jobs, save jobs, and create jobs. And we need to get on with that business here in the United States Senate. That's why I'm proud to have worked on the Environment and Public Works Committee to bring this bill forward. And I hope my colleagues will be judicious with their amendments so that we can get this bill through the Senate to the House so that we'll have an opportunity to get this to the President in the very near future. And with that, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
President.
Senator from Maryland,
I would ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be dispensed with.
without objection, so ordered.
Madam President, I would ask unanimous consent that the pending amendment be set aside so I can offer amendment number 407.
Is there objection? Hearing no objection, clerk will report.
The senator from Maryland, Mr. Cardin, proposes an amendment numbered 407. At the end, add the following. Prohibition on
Unanimous consent
interest...
that the amendment be considered as read.
Without objection.
Madam President, I will speak at a different point about this amendment, but this amendment is an equitable amendment dealing with the interest charges on loans government loans that are paid off in the middle of the month to prorate the interest. It's a consumer issue. It will, I think, help American families. And I will explain in more detail in a later part of our proceedings. And with that, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call a roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President, I ask the quorum call to be set aside.
Without objection, so ordered.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendments so that I may call up amendment number 428, which is at the desk.
Is there objection? Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam President.
Clerk will report the amendment.
The Senator from Oregon, Mr. Merkley, for himself and Ms. Snow, proposes amendment numbered 428. At the end, add the following. Title, Regulation.
Madam President, I ask for unanimous consent to dispense with further reading.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to also speak to the bill before us on economic development administration. I rise specifically to talk about the issue that is on the minds of all Americans, and that is the topic of jobs. Unemployment is far too high. My home state employment is very high, and that's before you count all of the folks who are underemployed, who have found some type of part-time work, but it's not enough to support their family. We all know how worried Americans are about this. It goes to the heart of their financial foundations, the success of their families, and it should be our top focus. The good news is that the bill before us creates jobs and stimulates the economy in our towns and regions that need the help the most. The Economic Development Administration assistance is targeted to both rural and urban areas experiencing high unemployment, low income, a natural disaster, or other severe economic distress. And it does this at a low cost and gets the most bang for our buck. The bill encourages private sector investment. Indeed, for every dollar the government spends on these projects, we leverage $7 in private investment. Madam President, that is terrific leverage for our national investment. With national unemployment still above 9% and with extreme storms causing destruction around the nation, our support in these regions matters now more than ever. Whether a town is recovering from a plant closure or a flood, it is critical that the community invest in planning for their new economic future. The kind of assistance provided by the Economic Development Act is critical to promoting economic growth and job creation, particularly in small communities. I'd like to share an example from my home state, the town of Vernonia, Oregon. It is a small community in the northern part of our state and was devastated by heavy flooding in 2007. Like many of the rural communities who are helped by these grants, Vernonia is too small to have a dedicated staff to help them rebuild the local economy. And that is where the EDA has a great role to play. Through 2 EDA programs, the federal government was able to step in and help by partnering with local governments and private business. And today, Vernonia is doing much better. As the executive director of that area's economic development district said, we would be lost without the EDA. Or take another example regarding the timber industry in Oregon, hit hard by declining demand because of the housing market being in the ditch. The timber companies and their workers are struggling, but they have 2 things on their side: great workers and great natural resources. And with the help of grants from the EDA, one of those lumber mills on the Klamath Reservation has been turned into a new biomass plant, producing green energy for the region, bringing new economic activity to the Klamath Reservation, and creating and saving jobs for Oregonians. Furthermore, the EDA can continue to help our timber companies and other similar businesses plan for the future, can play a key role in helping communities by coordinating between private companies and the Forest Service, can help companies project contracts that are likely to come down the road and how they can tailor their business model to grow accordingly. EDA investments are a proven path to retaining or creating new private sector job opportunities and helping small businesses diversify or expand. In fact, from 2005 to 2010, EDA projects led directly to the creation of more than 300,000 jobs. And this doesn't even count the many thousand more jobs that were created by those 7 private dollars for every public dollar. Without question, the EDA represents an efficient and cost-effective way to help distressed regions overcome challenges they are facing and build a new foundation for job growth in our communities. I urge my colleagues to pass this bill and to put our country back on the path to creating jobs. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator,
I note the absence of quorum.
clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, is the Senate in a quorum call?
Yes, we are.
I ask unanimous consent that quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
And I ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm pleased to come down to the Senate floor along with my colleague, Senator Corker, a fellow member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to speak about a joint resolution that we introduced earlier today that deals with the situation in Libya. This was introduced as a joint resolution rather than as an amendment on the current legislation because I believe that this matter is serious enough that our body should actually consider this as a standalone piece of legislation and coordinate it with the House and get this passed with due speed. This resolution, first of all, contains a statement of policy that American armed forces should be used exclusively to defend and advance our national security interests. Second, it prohibits the deployment, establishment, or maintenance of ground troops in Libya with two notable exceptions. The first would be for the purpose of immediate personal defense of American government officials, including diplomatic representatives, which I believe would be an important exclusion once and if we decide to conduct negotiations or reestablish our embassy inside Libya. The other exception would be for the purpose of rescuing members of the armed forces who would be in Libya and would be under imminent danger. It also prohibits the awarding of contract to private security contractors to conduct, establish, or maintain any activities on the ground in Libya. This language in Section 2 is similar to language that passed the House last week with a vote of 416 to 5. Section 3 includes a sense of Congress that the President should request congressional authorization for the continuation of American involvement in ongoing activities in Libya, and that the Congress, in its constitutional role, should debate and consider this matter expeditiously. Section 4 and 5 require the transmission of information to the Congress on a wide variety of information that to this point we have not been properly included on, and that language in some form passed the House last Friday with a vote of 216 to 145. Again, I appreciate very much Senator Corker's joining me as principal co-sponsor and together with this amendment, and I'd like to explain why I believe it's important that we take this measure as a body, as a Congress, in response to the actions that the President took in Libya nearly 3 months ago. First, we know and we are reminded every day that our economy is going through a terrible crisis, even as we are expending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on wars in the most vitriolic and contentious part of the world. Second, our military has been engaged in continuous combat operations now for nearly 10 years. We still have 45,000 military members in Iraq, despite a stated commitment for a full withdrawal by the end of this year. We have about 100,000 troops in Afghanistan, and the prospect for a meaningful withdrawal in the short term doesn't look good. When we examine the conditions under which the President ordered our military into action in Libya, we're faced, in my view, with the prospect of a very troubling, if not downright odd, historical precedent that has the potential to haunt us for decades. The issue in play here is not simply whether the President should ask the Congress for a declaration of war, nor is it wholly about whether the President has violated the edicts of the War Powers Act, which, in my view, he clearly has. The issue for us to consider is whether a President, any President, can unilaterally begin and continue a military campaign for reasons that he alone has defined as meeting the demanding standards of a vital national interest, worthy of risking American lives and expending billions of dollars of our taxpayers' money. What was the standard in this case? The initial justification was that a dictator might retaliate against people who rebelled against him. I do not make light of the potential tragedy involved in such a possibility, Mr. President, although it should be pointed out that there are a lot of dictators in the world. and very few democracies in this particular region, which gives this standard a pretty broad base if a president decides to use it again. And then, predictably, once military operations began in Libya, the stated goal became regime change, with combat now having dragged on for nearly 3 months. And so, in a world filled with cruelty, the question becomes whether a president, any president, should be able to pick and choose when and where to use military force using such a vague standard. And actually, that is the most important question, Mr. President. Given our system of government, who should decide? And even if a president should unilaterally decide on the basis of overwhelming, vital national interest that requires immediate action, how long should that decision be honored? And to what lengths should our military go before the matter is able to come under the proper scrutiny and the boundaries of our Congress? Let's review the bidding, Mr. President. What did it look like when our president ordered our military into action in Libya? And what has happened since? Was our country under attack or under a threat of an imminent attack? Was a clearly vital national interest at stake? Were we invoking the inherent right of self-defense as outlined in the United Nations Charter? Were we called upon by treaty commitments to come to the aid of an ally? Were we responding in kind to an attack on our forces elsewhere, as we did in the 1986 raids in Libya when I was in the Pentagon after American soldiers had been killed in a disco in Berlin? Were we rescuing Americans in distress, as we did in Grenada in 1983? No, we were not. The President followed no clear historical standard when he unilaterally decided to use force in Libya. Once this action continued beyond his original definition of days, not weeks, he did not seek the approval of Congress. And while he has discussed this matter with some members of Congress, this administration has not formally conferred with the legislative branch. I believe it is appropriate to question on whose behalf this continuing action is being taken, and most importantly at this point, what is going to be asked of our military in the coming months, assuming that the Gaddafi regime does fall. This isn't even a civil war, Mr. President. As Secretary of Defense Gates commented to me when I asked him that question during a hearing on the Armed Services Committee recently, you don't have a civil war when there's no clearly formed opposition movement. It's been a random rebellion. We can empathize with the frustrations of this rebellion. But looking into the future, the only thing that the opponents of the present regime all seem to agree on is that Gaddafi should go. I've said repeatedly over the past few months, this matters greatly when one considers what the aftermath of this action could entail for the international community. An additional curiosity is that we still recognize this regime, even as we have been participating for nearly 3 months in actions designed to destroy it. I've raised this matter repeatedly with our State Department. We have not severed relations with this regime, nor have we recognized a successor regime. We have merely suspended our relations. So we're looking at something of an historical anomaly, Mr. President. We are participating in attacks on a regime that we recognize on behalf of rebel forces that are so amorphous that we don't. And we really don't know what's going to replace the regime that we recognize once it's gone. Obviously, I'm not raising these points out of any lasting love for Mr. Gaddafi or any hopes that he continues in his present position. But let's be very clear. This is a region rife with tribalism, fierce loyalties, brutal retaliation. In this part of the world, the lust for revenge upon those who try to destroy you is not a characteristic that is unique to Mr. Gaddafi. Whether Gaddafi stays or fails, that's very likely going to be the future at some level in Libya. And this is not a place for American troops to be sent in order to sort out this mess. If other nations decide to do so, I certainly have no objection. But our military, stretched too thin, our economy is too fragile, and the reasons for us to continue in this effort are too ill-defined. So it's important for the Congress to step in Mr. President, and to clearly define the boundaries of our involvement. We should be saying, without hesitation, that no American ground personnel should be introduced into Libya, now or in the future. We should also be insisting on fair and open communication from this administration to the Congress, rather than the stonewalling that has characterized the past 3 months. Mr. President, this is not a political issue for me. Rather, it's an issue of how our government is structured. And I would submit that this issue has historical consequences. Our 3 branches of government were carefully designed by the Founding Fathers to guard against hasty decisions or judgments that would not be fully in our national interest. For centuries, the English monarchs have been able to wage wars of choice, with the only restriction being whether Parliament would raise enough taxes to fund their adventurous armies. Our Founding Fathers said no. The framers of the Constitution deliberately gave the Congress the specific power to rein in such conduct and to protect our people from unwise choices by insisting on a democratic consensus. The structure of international relations has become much more complex since then, but the principle is still vital, and it still must hold. Mr. President, over the past 10 years, in pursuit of a workable formula with which to defend our nation against legitimate threats, we have allowed the balance of power in our constitutional system to tilt far too heavily to the executive branch. There could be no clearer example of why the Congress must finally say enough is enough than the situation we now face in Libya. We must clearly say, as a governing body, that there are boundaries on the conduct of a president, any president, when it comes to his or her unilateral decision to use military force. We should be clear that American military forces, in uniform or not, do not belong on the ground in Libya. We should make it clear that we will not be deterred in requests for information that allow us to perform our responsibilities. To do less than that would bring us back in time to a system of government our forefathers risked their lives to improve upon. We are not the Parliament of King Charles. I believe my fellow members would agree that our role as a legislative body is more than that of collecting taxes so that the president, any president, can raise armies and fight wars of his own choosing. And that is why I am asking every senator to support this legislation. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
The senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I'm pleased to join the distinguished senator from Virginia, former Secretary of the Navy, in the introduction of this joint resolution, along with Senator Lee from Utah. And I look forward to a debate of this resolution next week, which I hope will end up passing both bodies and cause numbers of answers that we've been requesting to come forth. I want to discuss the ongoing situation in Libya, where specifically U.S. participation in NATO military operations authorized by the United Nations Security Council resolution passed on March 17, 2011. For those of you listening, you've heard me correctly. It was authorized by the United Nations, not the U.S. Congress. We're spending roughly $2 million per day on a mission which the President has yet to broadly consult Congress. I find it unbelievable that the President would seek the approval of the United Nations and the Arab League for military operations over Libya while sidelining the body that speaks for the American people, not even answering our questions. This is not consultation, nor is the President heeding the concerns of his own constituents. For many weeks now, I and many colleagues, for that matter, have attempted to gain answers to some of the most basic questions about what we are doing in Libya. Through hearings in the Foreign Relations Committee, we have not received these answers. We have asked for specific witnesses and received no response. This is not consultation. In my ongoing attempts to receive answers to these questions, I sent a letter to Secretary Clinton and Secretary Gates on April the 14th, 2011, specifically outlining 5 questions. I have the letter here and ask unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, 1 day shy of 8 weeks later, I finally received a response. This response didn't come from Secretary Clinton. It didn't come from Secretary Gates. This response came from the Acting Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs and only paid lip service to one of my 5 specific requests for information. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to enter this non-response into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, this is unacceptable. This is an unacceptable way to treat a co-equal branch of the U.S. government that has granted certain responsibilities to our armed forces by the founders of our country. Without these answers, members of Congress are unable to assess critical questions in the debate of whether we should continue to engage in military operations in Libya. This is why I'm pleased to join my colleagues, Senator Webb and Senator Lee, in introducing Senate Joint Resolution 18 today. This is a joint resolution drawing on language that has already passed the House of Representatives last week, and it requires the President to answer 21 questions critical to determining whether engagement in Libya is in the vital national interests of the United States. This joint resolution further expresses the sense of Congress that the President should request authorization from Congress for the continuation of the United States' involvement in ongoing NATO activities in Libya. And it says that Congress should fully debate and consider such a request in an expedient manner. Mr. President, I can't imagine there's anybody in this body that would not like to debate this issue on the floor regardless of how they may feel about this conflict. Mr. President, we owe it to every man and woman who puts on a uniform to serve our country and to every taxpayer who funds the operations to be clear that our entry into any conflict has been thoughtfully considered, contains clear justification, a clear mission, and a clear debate of the risk and benefits. The information sought by this joint resolution will help us meet those obligations. I look forward to the Senate considering this joint resolution in the near future, hopefully next week. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor and notice the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask